My brother set his fork down at Thanksgiving dinner, looked around the table at 12 family members, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I don't know why we keep inviting Sarah. She never contributes anything to this family." My mother nodded. My aunt looked at her plate. Nobody said a word. I set my wine glass down slowly. I looked at my brother, and I said, "Actually, Daniel, I think we should talk about contribution." I reached under my chair and placed a green folder on the table. The room went silent before I even opened it. My name is Sarah Brennan. I am 39 years old. I am a forensic financial analyst. And by the time dessert was served that evening, my brother understood exactly what 12 years of not contributing actually looked like on paper. Before we get into what was inside that folder, tell me the city you are watching from right now. Drop it in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. For as long as I could remember, Daniel was the son my parents organized their lives around. He was 2 years older, louder, and had a talent for presenting other people's ideas as his own. He had taken over the management of our family's small property business when our father retired 8 years ago. And from that point forward, the story became simple. Daniel ran the business. Daniel made the decisions. Daniel was the one who mattered. My role in the family had always been quieter. I had built my own career entirely outside the family structure, working for an independent audit firm that specialized in financial investigations. I was good at it. I was very good at it. But because my work happened at a desk in an office downtown rather than in family meetings around a conference table, it was treated as invisible, something I did for myself, something that didn't count as contribution. The passive comments had been building for years. Sarah's off doing her own thing. Sarah doesn't really invest in the family. It would be nice if Sarah showed up for something that matters. I absorbed them. I focused on my work. I told myself that eventually the record would speak for itself. Then came Thanksgiving. The dinner had been going well enough until Daniel's second glass of wine. That was usually when the filter came off. He had been talking about the business for 40 minutes, exaggerating his role in a recent property sale, when the conversation turned to a cousin who had recently moved away and become less present at gatherings. "It happens," Daniel said, with the casual authority of a man who had never questioned his own centrality. "Some people just don't prioritize family." He paused, looked directly at me across the table, and added, "I don't know why we keep inviting Sarah. She never contributes anything to this family." My mother adjusted her napkin. My aunt found something interesting on her plate. My father looked at the wall. 12 people at the table, and not one of them pushed back. I had not planned what happened next. But I had brought the folder because I had been planning for quite some time to have a different kind of conversation with my brother about the family business. Thanksgiving had simply accelerated the timeline. I set my wine glass down. I reached under my chair. I placed the green folder on the table between the sweet potato dish and the gravy boat. I looked at Daniel and said, "Actually, I think we should talk about contribution." He blinked. "What is that?" "That," I said, "is 3 years of financial review of the family property business." Let me tell you what nobody at that table knew. 2 years into Daniel's management of the business, our father had quietly asked me to take a look at the accounts. Not formally, not officially, just a look, he said, because some numbers weren't making sense to him and he didn't want to make accusations without understanding what he was looking at. I was a forensic financial analyst. Looking at numbers was what I did. I looked. What I found took 3 months to fully map. A pattern of vendor payments going to a company that didn't appear in any public business registry. Expense reimbursements submitted for dates that corresponded to Daniel's personal travel. A management fee structure that had been quietly increased over 2 years without any formal board approval. Channeling an additional $94,000 directly to Daniel. I documented everything. I organized it into a clean, clear report with exhibits and supporting records. And then I brought it to my father privately, because that was his right. He asked me to hold it while he considered how to proceed. He was still considering when he passed away 14 months later. The business passed to both of us equally under his will. But Daniel had been operating it as though it were entirely his own. I had spent the months since my father's death consulting with an attorney, understanding my rights as an equal owner and preparing for the conversation that Daniel had just unknowingly opened the door to. I opened the folder. "This section," I said, sliding the first exhibit toward the center of the table. "Documents 3 years of payments to a vendor called Crestline Property Services." I paused. Crestline Property Services does not appear in the State Business Registry. It does not have a registered agent. It does not have a verifiable address. I looked at Daniel. "But it has received $61,000 from the family business since you took over management." The color left Daniel's face so quickly that my aunt actually asked if he was feeling all right. "This section," I continued, moving to the second exhibit, documents expense reimbursements submitted under the category of property maintenance. Cross-referenced against the actual maintenance logs, $23,000 in reimbursements correspond to dates when no maintenance work was scheduled or completed. I looked up again. "And this section documents the management fee increase you implemented in year 2 of your tenure, without owner approval, which directed an additional $94,000 to your personal account over a 30-month period." I closed the folder. "That's $178,000, I said. "Over 3 years, from a business that I own half of." The table was completely silent, not the polite silence of a dinner conversation pausing. The specific silence of 12 people who had just watched something they could not unhear. Daniel opened his mouth. He said it was more complicated than it looked. He said the vendor situation had a perfectly reasonable explanation. He said the management fee adjustment was within his authority. Each sentence came out slightly less certain than the one before it. He was constructing a defense in real time, and every person at the table could see the construction happening. My mother looked at him in a way I had never seen her look at him before. I let him finish. Then I said calmly, "My attorney has a copy of this report. The business's external accountant has a copy. And I have formally requested a full independent audit of all accounts since the date you assumed management. You'll be receiving the paperwork next week." My aunt excused herself to use the restroom. 2 cousins suddenly became very interested in the bread rolls. Daniel sat across from me, his Thanksgiving plate untouched, looking at the green folder like it was a living thing. He tried once more. He said this wasn't the time or place. He said we should handle family matters privately. I said, "You made a comment about my contribution in front of 12 people." I thought it was appropriate to respond in front of 12 people. Nobody argued with that. The audit took 4 months. The findings confirmed everything I had documented. My attorney negotiated a structured repayment arrangement covering the full amount, with interest, and a formal restructuring of the management agreement that gave me equal oversight of all financial decisions going forward. Daniel retained his management role because the business ran better with someone actively managing it, and I had no interest in punishing the business for his decisions. I had an interest in correcting them. My mother called me 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. She didn't apologize for what Daniel had said. She said something more unexpected. She said she thought our father had always known I was the one paying attention, and that she thought he had asked me to look at the books because he trusted me more than he ever said out loud. That was enough. Daniel has not made a comment about my contribution since that dinner. The family gatherings have been quieter. The business is running more accurately. And the green folder sits in a drawer in my home office, its work completed, keeping its own quiet record of what contribution actually looks like when you finally measure it honestly. Now I want to hear from you. If you had been sitting at that table and someone dismissed everything you'd built, would you have opened the folder? Or would you have waited for a different moment? Tell me in the comments. And tell me the city you are watching from right now. I want to see exactly how far this story has reached. Subscribe before you go. More stories are coming that you will not want to miss.